Well, hi folks, Ken Ring here of www.predictweather.com, bringing you more information about the weather from the point of view of the moon, the orbits of the sun, and various natural things that people don't generally consider. I thought I'd give you a couple of hints today about what to do when you're outside. Now, if in the morning you look up and it's totally grey all over, and you look up again in about an hour later, it's still grey, well, the chances are that there's going to be fairly intermittent showers throughout the day in your area. But if you look up and there's a bit of blue sky, or even mostly cloudy, but a bit of blue sky, for instance now, it's pretty blue, and chances are that you're not going to get that degree of rain, that it's probably going to be scarce in terms of rain where you are. That's what the ancients used to do, the farmers, the mariners. They used to look up, see what direction the clouds were going in, look up again about an hour later, see if anything had changed. One thing they did look for was what we call the cirrus clouds. Some people call them contrails, some misguided people call them chemtrails, but there's nothing like that. They're actually high ice, and they look like candy floss stretched out. We don't have any up here at the moment. They are actually very high clouds, and when you see them increasing over the course of a couple of hours, then you know it's going to rain in about 36 hours time, because they get heavier and fall, and they create rain clouds eventually. But there's none of that today. They're cumulus clouds today, which are like bunches of cauliflower, bunches of ice cream, and they're fair weather indications. And it's coming up to the neap tide at the moment. Neap tide in 2 days' time. What neap tide means is one of the lesser tidal heights in terms of tidal variation between the high tide and the low tide, and as against the king tide, where the tide comes right up the beach, and when it goes out, it goes way out. That happens once a month. So the king tide happens once a month as well, sometimes twice, depending on whether it's right at the beginning of the month or near the middle. Now, when you get a neap tide, you generally get higher pressures because there's a slowing of the currents, and so there's less mixing, if you like. Within the oceans, the surface temperatures they tend to be higher, and so the pressures are higher, and this is the air pressure is higher. That's when you get a neap tide, and that brings you more settled weather. So over the next few days in Auckland, we've got, where I live, we've got about 4 days of fairly settled weather, which is good news for me because I go walking, and I always go walking at the time of the high tide, because high tide every day is pretty well settled weather. How do I know that it's high tide? Well, I look to see where the moon is, and when the moon's exactly in the northeast, that's where I'm looking now, then wherever I am in the world, if I see the moon in the northeast, I know it's high tide exactly down at the beach where I live, right along from Onehunga to about the Manukau Heads. It's pretty near high tide. It's just a quirk of this area, but it does follow the moon wherever you are all year. It's up to you to find out where the moon is when your beach is high tide, and then you can check on it any time, any year, anywhere you are. On the east coast of Auckland, the tide is actually 3 hours behind that. But anyway, we'll talk more about that later on in these blogs. So what's coming up around the rest of the world? Well, look, we're past perigee, which is when the moon came closer to the Earth, and that was on the 6th, and we have winds and mayhem all around the world. We had typhoons in Philippines, and we had extreme weather systems coming up from the South Island to the North Island in New Zealand, and of course New South Wales had a lot of wind which fanned those flames of the bushfires, but that's lessening now. as we get away from the perigee. So it's sort of a more settled time, if you like, for the whole world. The whole world rotates underneath the moon every 24 hours, so everybody really gets the same script that the moon is dictating. Of course, we don't all get the same weather, because just like people all have different personalities and react differently when they drink from the same bottle of champagne, well, so all places react differently when they're subject to the moon's position wherever it is. Anyway, thank you for your attention, and I hope you're going to learn something that you didn't know before from these videos, and I'll catch you tomorrow.